You know that moment when someone approaches you at a gathering and your mind instantly goes into panic mode. Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, and suddenly you're calculating the exact distance to the nearest bathroom or exit. Sound familiar? If you're an INTJ or INFJ, this scenario probably plays out in your head like a horror movie on repeat. But here's what nobody tells you about being a shy introvert in social situations. You're not broken, you're not weird, and you definitely don't need to become someone else to master the art of conversation. This video is going to completely change how you think about social interaction. I'm going to show you why your introverted brain is actually wired for deeper, more meaningful conversations than most people can even imagine. Reveal the hidden advantages that INTJ and INFJ have in social settings that nobody talks about. And by the end, give you a systematic approach that works specifically for your personality type, even if you consider yourself painfully shy. But here's the thing. Most people get completely wrong about introverts and social skills. They think you need to become more extroverted to be good at talking to people. That's like telling a chess master they need to become a football player to win games. You're operating with completely different strengths, and when you try to copy extroverted social strategies, you're fighting against your natural wiring. Most advice out there tells you to be more outgoing, more spontaneous, more energetic. Wrong approach entirely. The real secret isn't about changing who you are. It's about leveraging exactly who you already are in ways that feel authentic and sustainable. Let me paint you a picture of what usually happens. You're at a work event, family gathering, or social meetup. Someone strikes up a conversation, and immediately your brain starts overanalyzing every possible response. You think about 17 different ways to answer their simple question while they're standing there waiting. By the time you've mentally rehearsed the perfect response, the moment has passed and things feel awkward. Then you beat yourself up thinking you're terrible at this whole social thing. But here's what's actually happening that nobody explains to you. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do. INTJ and INFJ process information differently than extroverts. You're not slow or awkward, you're thorough. While extroverts think out loud and process in real time, you process internally first. That's not a bug in your system, that's a feature. The problem is you're trying to play their game by their rules instead of understanding how to use your natural processing style as a social advantage. The people who seem naturally good at small talk aren't necessarily smarter or more charismatic than you. They're just using strategies that align with their personality type. What you need are strategies that align with yours. However, before I show you exactly how to do this, you need to understand something crucial about how your mind works in social situations. When you're in conversation mode, your brain is running multiple background processes simultaneously. You're analyzing body language, tone of voice, subtext, potential conversation threads, and trying to predict where the interaction might go. This is actually an incredible social superpower, but most INTJ and INFJ don't realize it because they're too busy feeling overwhelmed by all that mental activity. The key is learning to channel that natural analysis into conversation flow instead of letting it create analysis paralysis. Watch what happens when you stop fighting against your natural tendencies and start working with them. Instead of trying to think of something clever to say in the moment, you prepare your mind differently. Instead of forcing spontaneous responses, you create a framework that lets your analytical nature shine. The biggest mistake shy introverts make is thinking they need to become someone else in social situations. You don't need to be the life of the party. You don't need to be funny or entertaining or magnetic. You need to be genuinely you, but strategically you. Therefore, the approach I'm about to show you works because it's designed specifically for how your brain processes social information. It takes your natural strengths like deep thinking, pattern recognition, and genuine curiosity about people, and turns them into conversation tools that feel completely natural to use. But here's where most social advice for introverts goes wrong. It focuses on techniques and tactics without addressing the underlying mindset that makes those techniques feel forced and unnatural. You can memorize 100 conversation starters, but if you're still operating from a place of social anxiety and self-doubt, none of them will feel authentic. The foundation of confident conversation for INTJ and INFJ isn't about what you say. It's about how you think about the entire interaction. When you shift your internal narrative from "I need to impress this person" to "I'm genuinely curious about this person's perspective," everything changes. This mental shift transforms social interactions from performance anxiety into intellectual exploration. Suddenly, you're not trying to entertain someone, you're trying to understand them. That's something your introverted brain is naturally excellent at doing. However, there's a specific way to channel this curiosity that creates engaging conversation without draining your social battery. Most introverts burn out quickly in social situations because they're trying to maintain an energy level that's unsustainable for their personality type. The solution isn't to push through the exhaustion. The solution is to engage in ways that actually energize you instead of depleting you. When you learn to have conversations that feed your natural interests and intellectual curiosity, social interaction becomes genuinely enjoyable instead of something you have to survive. Let me show you exactly what this looks like in practice. Instead of dreading small talk, you start seeing every conversation as an opportunity to learn something fascinating about another human being. Instead of worrying about whether you're being interesting enough, you become genuinely interested in discovering what makes the other person tick. This approach works because it aligns with your natural strengths while addressing your specific challenges. You're not pretending to be extroverted. You're being strategically introverted in ways that create genuine connection. The beauty of this method is that it actually makes you more memorable and interesting to others, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're giving them something most people never experience. You're giving them your full attention and genuine curiosity about who they are as a person. Therefore, when you master this approach, you'll discover something amazing. The same qualities that make you feel awkward in superficial social situations actually make you incredibly powerful in meaningful conversations. Your depth, your thoughtfulness, your ability to see patterns and connections that others miss. These all become conversation assets instead of social liabilities. But there's a systematic way to develop these skills that doesn't overwhelm your introverted nervous system. The key is building your social confidence gradually in ways that feel manageable and authentic to your personality type. However, before we dive into the specific techniques, I need to address something that holds most shy introverts back from even trying to improve their social skills. The belief that you're fundamentally different from people who are naturally good at conversation. This belief creates a mental barrier that makes every social interaction feel like you're playing a game you'll never be good at. The truth is, you're not fundamentally different. You're just operating with different strengths and different processing styles. When you understand how to leverage your natural way of thinking in social contexts, you'll discover that meaningful conversation isn't just possible for you. It's actually easier than it is for most extroverts. The reason most social skills advice fails for INTJ and INFJ is because it treats all personality types like they have the same social operating system. That's like giving a Mac user PC instructions and wondering why nothing works properly. Your brain has a completely different architecture for processing social information, and once you understand how to work with that architecture instead of against it, everything becomes significantly easier. Most extroverts process social information in real time through external dialogue. They think out loud, bounce ideas off others, and use conversation as a way to explore their own thoughts. Your brain works in reverse. You process internally first, develop complete thoughts, and then share the refined version. This isn't a limitation. It's actually a sophisticated approach that creates higher quality interactions. However, the challenge comes when you try to speed up your natural processing to match extroverted conversation pace. That's when you feel overwhelmed, tongue-tied, and mentally exhausted. The solution isn't to process faster. It's to create conversational space for your natural processing style to operate effectively. Watch what happens when you stop trying to keep up with rapid-fire small talk and start steering conversations toward your natural level chatter about depth preference. Instead of surface weather and weekend plans, you guide interactions toward topics that genuinely engage your analytical mind. This shift transforms draining social obligation into energizing intellectual exchange. The secret is recognizing that most people are actually hungry for deeper conversation, but don't know how to initiate it themselves. When you learn to bridge from surface topics to meaningful dialogue, you're giving others permission to drop their small talk mask and engage authentically. This is where your introverted strengths become obvious social advantages. Therefore, the first technique specifically designed for your personality type involves what I call strategic depth shifting. Instead of staying stuck in superficial exchanges, you learn to identify natural transition points where you can guide conversations toward more substantial territory without seeming abrupt or intense. But here's what makes this approach particularly powerful for shy introverts. You're not trying to dominate conversations or become the center of attention. You're creating space for genuine exchange where both people can engage authentically. This removes the performance pressure that makes social interaction feel exhausting. Let me show you exactly how this works in practice. When someone mentions they had a busy week, instead of the typical follow-up questions about specific activities, you might observe that busy often means different things to different people. Some people thrive on packed schedules, while others find them draining. This opens space for them to share their actual experience rather than just listing tasks. This technique works because you're demonstrating the kind of thoughtful observation that your introverted brain naturally makes anyway. You're taking your internal analysis and sharing just enough to create conversational momentum without overwhelming the other person with your complete thought process. However, there's a specific way to calibrate this approach so it feels natural rather than forced. The key is reading social energy levels and matching your depth to what the situation can handle. Not every interaction needs to become a philosophical discussion, but every interaction can benefit from your natural insight and genuine interest. The second technique leverages your pattern recognition abilities in ways that make conversations flow naturally. Your brain is constantly noticing connections, inconsistencies, and underlying themes in what people share. Most introverts keep these observations internal, but learning to share them appropriately creates engaging dialogue that feels effortless. Instead of struggling to think of questions to ask, you start noticing patterns in what people tell you and reflecting those observations back in ways that invite deeper sharing. When someone describes their job challenges, you might notice themes about autonomy, creativity, or interpersonal dynamics and gently explore those patterns with them. This approach transforms you from someone who feels socially awkward into someone who helps others feel understood and interesting. You're using your natural analytical abilities to create the kind of meaningful connection that most people crave but rarely experience in casual social settings. Therefore, Conversations become energizing rather than draining because you're engaging your intellectual curiosity instead of forcing artificial enthusiasm. You're not pretending to care about topics that bore you. You're finding the genuinely interesting human elements in every interaction. The third technique addresses the specific challenge of social anxiety that many shy introverts experience. Instead of trying to eliminate nervous energy, you learn to channel that mental activity into productive social awareness. Your heightened sensitivity to social dynamics can become a conversation asset when you know how to use it properly. But here's the crucial mindset shift that makes everything else possible. You need to stop viewing your introverted traits as social handicaps and start recognizing them as conversation superpowers that most people don't possess. Your ability to listen deeply, notice subtleties, and think before speaking are exactly the qualities that create memorable, meaningful interactions. However, developing these skills requires a practice approach that doesn't overwhelm your social energy reserves. Most shy introverts avoid social situations entirely, which means they never get comfortable with their own social abilities. The solution is strategic practice in low-stakes environments where you can experiment without pressure. The goal isn't to become a social butterfly or the most popular person in the room. The goal is to become genuinely comfortable being yourself in social settings while creating the kind of authentic connections that actually matter to you as an introvert. When you master these approaches, something remarkable happens. You stop dreading social situations and start seeing them as opportunities to practice your natural people-reading skills. You begin to realize that meaningful conversation isn't about being entertaining or impressive. It's about being genuinely present with another human being. Therefore, the conversations you have become more satisfying for everyone involved because you're bringing your authentic self to the interaction instead of trying to perform a version of yourself that doesn't feel natural. This authenticity creates the kind of connection that both introverts and extroverts find refreshing and memorable. But there's one more element that ties all of these techniques together into a comprehensive approach that works specifically for your personality type. The framework I'm about to share gives you a systematic way to navigate any social situation with confidence, regardless of how shy or socially anxious you might feel going in. The framework is simple but transformative. Before any social interaction, remind yourself of 3 core truths. You're not there to perform, you're there to connect. You don't need to be interesting, you need to be interested. Your natural processing style is an asset, not an obstacle. When you walk into your next social situation, you'll have tools that actually work with your personality instead of against it. You'll know how to shift conversations to meaningful territory without seeming intense. You'll recognize how to use your analytical nature to help others feel genuinely understood. Most importantly, you'll realize that the qualities that make you feel different are exactly what make you valuable in authentic human connection. The next time someone approaches you at a gathering, your mind won't go into panic mode. Instead, you'll see an opportunity to practice these skills with someone who might be just as hungry for real conversation as you are. You'll discover that being strategically introverted creates far better connections than pretending to be extroverted ever could. Your shyness doesn't disqualify you from meaningful social interaction. It just means you need strategies designed for how your mind actually works. Start with one technique. Practice it until it feels natural, then build from there. Thanks for watching, and remember, the world needs more people who think deeply and connect authentically. That's exactly what you bring to every conversation.